Let's begin by introducing ourselves. Dwight, would you start?
Dwight Wilson, Commissioner.
Vivian Chang, Commissioner.
Muhammad Al-Azm, Commissioner.
Pam Dent, Commissioner.
Rick Ratliff, Commissioner.
Leslie Stambaugh, Commissioner and Chair.
David Baum, Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Linda Winkler, Commissioner.
Corinne Moore, Commissioner.
Thank you. First thing we have to do is approve the agenda. Does anybody have any?
I'd like to move to amend the agenda. As per a discussion we had earlier this week, I think we should discuss the LGBTQA liaison to the mayor, since Brad O'Fury has resigned, and I'd like to see if we could identify people who might be interested in serving and get something moving. So I think that should be on the agenda.
Can we put that at the end of administrative issues?
I think that'd be fun.
Thanks. Any others? Discussion? Can we have a motion to
So moved.
Seconded.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Rick,
Yes,
we have guests.
we do.
We are honored. Please introduce them.
I'd be honored to do that. Our guests are going to speak to us about the Ann Arbor unit of the ACLU. We have Lisa Maskell. She's the chair of the unit. She's also an attorney at Legal Services of South Central Michigan and focuses her practice on housing and family law. And she sat on the board of the Metro Detroit ACLU for several years. Daniel Ellman is the vice chair, and he graduated from Michigan Law School in 2011. He's worked as a public defender in New York City, came back to Michigan in 2011 to clerk for Justice Richard Bernstein on the Michigan Supreme Court, and he continues that work today. So if you'd like to come forward and tell us about the ACLU, that'd be great.
Thank you so much for the invitation. We're going to keep it pretty short. I'm going to speak a little bit about the ACLU generally, and then Dan's going to talk a little bit about what our organization locally is doing. So the ACLU has got several different moving parts to it. There's the national branch that was founded in 1920. The ACLU of Michigan was founded in 1959, and so it's an old organization. The mission is really to protect the rights and liberties that are enshrined in the Bill of Rights. And they do that through advocacy, education, organizing, and litigation. Those are really the main ways that they do the work. They have also key areas within sort of the broader Bill of Rights, and there's quite a few of them, so I brought a list. That includes free speech, due process, racial justice, LGBT rights, women's rights, voting rights, privacy and technology, reproductive freedom, criminal justice, immigrant rights, search and seizure, student rights, prisoner rights, disability rights, drug policy, religious liberty, workplace rights, and then something that they refer to as safe and free, which is essentially a checks and balances on the privacy issues surrounding programs that are designed to protect national security. So as the government does more intrusion into our privacy, they are looking at that as an issue. So underneath the umbrella of the ACLU of Michigan, there's also local units, and that's what we're here representing, the Washtenaw County branch. There's one in Lansing, Metro Detroit, Oakland County, there's a Western Michigan branch as well. And some of these have been around for decades. I know the Metro Detroit one has been around for many decades. Some of the board members have been sitting on the board for many decades, and it's a really awesome organization that gets a lot of cool events done. And you know, I think the goal of the local units is to engage people more in the communities on a smaller level. They're not doing these huge cases that are really out of touch for people that want to get involved. So the way that people get involved on the local units would be there's really kind of two mechanisms. One would either be to start a local unit, which is what we've done, or to start a project which we've also done. So we've done both of those things. The ACLU of Michigan has designed a mechanism for you to kind of fill out a form if you have a project that you want to get involved with, as long as it kind of falls under one of their key areas and you've got a PRGME, formulated approach to getting it done. They're probably going to want to work with you, and so it's a pretty neat opportunity. They also have field directors that work for the ACLU of Michigan that are designed to assist people in getting their projects off the ground. Not everyone really has the time to commit to launch a project. So it can really be something as small as, tabling an event, or it can be a really long, involved process. And to that point, I'm going to hand it off to Dan to talk a little bit about the project that we formed.
Right, so as Lisa mentioned, we wanted to think about a project that is accessible to people and that they can get involved in, but is also important to the community. And so we focused amongst this list on student rights because as of before last year, Michigan was a zero tolerance state in that certain offenses that were committed by students in school resulted in mandatory expulsions without consideration of any kind of discretionary factors. If they were found to have done this thing, you were expelled. And it doesn't take a lot to understand how an expulsion can really affect a child in a negative way. So a bipartisan bill was passed last year, became effective last year, called Rethink Discipline, which is now part of the MCL code, and requires 7 factors to be considered before a student can be expelled for these certain named offenses, some of which are assault and persistent misdemeanor conduct, or however that's going to be defined by the laws. So if a student is charged with those offenses, even if he is found to have done those things, these 7 factors have to be considered before the school can expel them. The 7 factors consist of things like the student's age, whether the student has a disability, an IEP plan, the student's disciplinary record. So all of these kind of things now have to go into the consideration to make it more of a holistic determination about whether expulsion is a good thing to do, basically. So our goal is to educate really anyone who listened, but primarily schools, parents, teachers, to understand this law. We are not advocating in any way. We exist kind of as an educational opportunity and resource to people so that they can come and ask us, how does the law work? We can explain it to them, provide them with resources if they need that, just so everyone does it in the right way. And we hope that there's cooperation in this sense. So that will be our plan going forward in the next few months to roll that out to various schools in the area.
There's a couple of additional elements that were already in existence that we have kind of connected with. So there's the Student Advocacy Center, which is a statewide organization, and they work with students that are going to disciplinary hearings and can represent them at those hearings. They take complaints. They're sort of like a, like a hotline. They have a hotline, and they're also just a group of people that are designed, their mission is to review all of these and to make sure that students are getting what they're entitled to. And a lot of times what ends up happening after these expulsions is that the kids can't find another school to go to. So they're going to online programs, and the online programs are completely dysfunctional. And it's just like a really horrible system. And so they're already doing this work. We're partnering with them to make sure that they have materials related to the law that they can distribute. And, we can go to events together and kind of, it's a natural partnership there. There's also a group with the University of Michigan called the Student Rights Center, right? And that's a group of Michigan law students and social work students. And they, under the supervision of an attorney at my program, Legal Services of South Central Michigan, actually do some of these hearings as well. And so they're looking at the legal aspects of it and will actually go and represent students. Together, those two agencies, along with the attorney from our office, are reviewing cases and looking for cases that actually could be, could be ripe to actually litigate outside of the disciplinary administrative process. So there's a lot of different aspects to it, and we as the local unit are trying to partner with them and support that process as well.
there any questions, we'd have to answer them.
I assume we're talking generally about, are we talking about K through 12 students as opposed to
Correct.
college students, right?
Right.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct, yeah.
How, do you have any sort of a sense of how widespread this, these sorts of issues are?
So we're still fairly new to delving into the data. I
Yeah.
will say that the Student Advocacy Center has been doing this a really long time, and really, really knows the data quite well. And so Perry Stone Palmquist leads that organization. We've met with her a couple of times. So she's really got her finger on the pulse of that, and is just, she's a great person to refer issues over, and would probably be the better person to answer that question, I guess.
But we do think it's a widespread enough problem that it's worth focusing on, because we've heard enough stories that we think it's a significant problem that needs to be addressed. So I can't quote the numbers to you, but we know it exists.
There appears also to be concentration of, maybe lower income neighborhoods where they see higher incidence of stricter and less discretionary, less discretion used in the disciplinary hearing. So we want to look for those trends. I think, right now we're kind of getting our feet wet with the whole process, but the goal really is to target those schools that have the highest rate of expulsions and see if we can work with them to develop alternative approaches that will serve students better in the long run.
I'd like to say I appreciate you supporting now. Not that you didn't, but I was a principal in Detroit, excuse me, when one of my 7th graders came with a gun, with a toy gun, and it was seen, and she was brought down to the office. According to the law, I suppose, I was supposed to have expelled her, which I did not do. I took the toy gun and called her father and told him he needed to come pick it up, and she was suspended for a day. But if I had, when I saw what the letter of the law was, I already knew what it was, but I checked anyway. And I also knew that to expel somebody who had never been in my office once made absolutely no sense. And considering the fact that it was a private school, that would have meant, too, that she lost all of her tuition. That was a number of years ago. She's now a college grad and has been a professional for 2 or 3 years. But thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, because I think had she been expelled, that would have completely altered the trajectory of her life. Right?
Totally, totally. I would have followed the law, but she would have been ruined. So.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, I think when someone's charged with a criminal offense, when sentencing them, we often take into consideration a lot of factors. So why are we not giving our students the same considerations?
Welcome. I'm delighted to hear actually that you're working closely with the Students' Right Project at Michigan Law School. I know for a couple of years, I used to work there. Welcome back, Danny. Nice to see you. Hi, nice to see you. I know there were some issues about whether or not they had the attorney supervision that they needed to be able to help represent these kids. So I think that's really terrific. Are there other of the law schools in Michigan who have gotten involved with helping represent?
Not that I'm aware of, but that's certainly possible that exists, and I'm just not aware of it. I know that there's this special, thing going on at Michigan. I went to Wayne State University. I know that we did, school to prison pipeline type of work there as well. But that's a great idea. I think it would be wise to expand it to other law schools and other schools in general.
Are you doing much work in,
That's fine.
in Ann Arbor schools?
So our fellow board member, Nick, is an alum of Ann Arbor Schools and has made a connection here. So I think that that's going to be, and we didn't make this clear, but we're still pretty early in this process. And so we've started making those connections with the administrators of the Ann Arbor School District, and we're figuring out what those next steps are going to be. We have, we've written this entire plan with all of these action steps, and now we're trying to, actually implement those and make it happen. So we are in the early stages of that, yeah.
Have you been in touch with Belinda Doolin at the Dispute Resolution Center? If you haven't, you might want to, because not only do they do special ed mediation, which often involves expulsions related to disability, but they have been doing sort of peacekeeping work and circles when kids have been expelled or to prevent expulsion as an alternative to expulsions. So you might want to just get in touch with her.
Yeah, that's a great thing to know, because again, our intention is not to create a contentious issue here. We think that a lot of parties want to cooperate. Exactly. And so that's exactly the kind of person we can reach out to and work with. Yeah.
And my other question is, do you see any role for us in this? Or you maybe haven't thought that far, but I guess I'm inviting you to include us if there's any way that we can be helpful.
I appreciate that. We'll definitely reach out if there's a way that we think could be useful, for sure.
Yeah.
So one of the last things I want to point out is that's the project that we're working on. Independent of that, we've got our local unit that's just the 4 of us that meet and sort of do administrative tasks. And our role there is to invite other people to get involved either with this project or to start their own project, and just sort of as a contact point for the community. I know when I worked and went to school downtown Detroit for a long time, so it was great. I was, right at the ACLU of Michigan office all the time. It was easy to do that. And when I no longer worked there, it was really difficult to stay involved. And so I reached out to the field director and said, is there anyone in Washtenaw County that's doing this? There's got to be a ton of people that are interested. And he connected me with other folks that were also interested. So we got the local unit approved. And now we're starting to hold public meetings. They are tentatively set for the first Tuesday of the month. The last couple public meetings have been at Espresso Royale on Main Street in Ann Arbor, sort of by the bushes. But we send out email blasts. There's an email that people can write to us at. That's just an ACLU email.
What is that email?
That is Washtenaw at aclumich.org. And I will try and get you something printed if that would be helpful for you. Yeah. Okay. So anyone who wants to sign up for a mailing list or get in touch with us, that's a great way to do it. Or you can give them my personal information, and I'm happy to reach out to them. And we're hoping that people get involved. And really, it runs the gamut. If someone wants to just get some ACLU stuff and table an event, that's totally welcome. If they want to launch a huge project, that's also possible. So.
Yeah, and I think many of the issues that you see on this commission probably relate in some way to the things that were listed here. So if someone comes to you and it's not exactly an issue that you deal with or you think would work well with us, send them over to us, because we have this education project, but as Lisa mentioned, we're very flexible to accepting all kinds of things. So we're here to solicit that from you as well.
Build on what Linda said about Dispute Resolution Center. At the end of this meeting, if there's time, part of Commissioner Communications, I want to report with Jordan about this presentation we heard about the circles and how it's working in Skyline High. It's very interesting. So if we have time and if you want to stay.
Well, or you can watch it on video.
Yes, But it's definitely things you'd be interested in.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
As ways of, it seems to have been effective in lowering expulsions and suspensions, and that's
our goal.
all good thing.
You mentioned this was one of the projects that you're working on. Are you open to, and you've kind of alluded to that, but I'm just asking more for clarification. Are you open to accepting other projects? Yes. And I'm specifically speaking to, at our last commission meeting, we learned that our legislature affirmed law that prohibits municipalities from enacting legislation relative to compelling employers to refrain from asking the question or ban the box. Mm-hmm. So I tasked myself to kind of report on that, but I haven't actually begun that process for a couple of reasons. We're told that even though the city has has enacted legislation that is contrary to state law, specifically requiring merchants to refrain from selling alcohol to individuals who are under 21, which is contrary to state law, which says it's 18. I was told that if we do bring something to council, that they would probably not entertain a motion to enact either anything that is contrary to state law. But EEOC has gone on record with information where they say that they encourage employers to refrain from asking the questions until either an offer has been extended or it is prohibited based on the employment itself. Also, there are cities in the state that have already gone on record enacting legislation in their municipalities where they do ban employers from asking that question until an offer of employment has been extended. So, in a roundabout way, I'm asking, are you interested in entertaining any, any efforts towards that particular subject matter, banding box?
So I think the great thing about the local units is that if there's someone who's interested in that, if that person is you and you want to get some support from the ACLU on that, you can come up with some ideas, and we can submit it to the ACLU for approval. Certainly, I think there's interest in that. I've heard lots of people talking about that issue, and sometimes it comes down to resources. We have a pretty involved process going on, and there are other people that regularly come to meetings that are not quite as involved as we are, who may want to do that and jump in more with that. So that's always the challenge, but certainly, yes, I would say if that's something that you're looking for, a place to go to get some support, this is exactly the kind of thing that you could bring and see if it could go anywhere with it.
Yeah, we think there's really two kinds of people that are attracted to the ACLU. There's the people that come with a definite idea of what they want to do, and people who have no idea what they want to do. And we're open to with either one of those people. So in creating the organization, we wanted to create a project like we did for the people who just want to come and help out, right? And that's great, and we welcome that, and that they can be incredibly helpful. So we wanted to provide this educational project for them to just jump in with. But other people have other ideas that are important to them, and our door's open to them too. So the answer is absolutely yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. Other questions? Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
Ann,
you.
for inviting us.
Thank you.
Okay, March minutes. Does anybody need a copy of the minutes? Any comments about the minutes? Things that you would like to change or questions? Okay, can we have a,
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay. I assume, yes. Okay. Introduction. I want to let you know that last meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council, I met Jordan Jones, who expressed great interest in working with the Ann Arbor Human Rights Commission and is volunteering her time and willing to do so. So I thought I would introduce you, and we'll see if we can find things to do that she's interested in. But Jordan, please come up and say a few words.
So I'm Jordan, and all of that is very true. I think, the first question to be asked is where my interest lies in working for the commission. And so I wrote something, and I think this kind of gives an indication of my character, but then, of course, illustrates why I'd actually like to work for the commission. When I consider what motivates me, I believe it's easier to extrapolate a larger meaning, further helping me determine the personal impact of working for any organization that serves a community or public interests. This, in turn, explains my diligence or dedication to the cause. If I may paraphrase a parable, when I am to go before my Maker, self or otherwise, it is less about what you have done for yourself and more about what you have done for others. No matter how you define God, the Maker, or energies at large, the message behind this parable remains true in all centers and circumstances. At the tipping point, a person's with an investment and social gifts become valuable and obligated to stand on behalf of the public. As an advocate of transparency and an understanding of the only universal truth, that all beings are entitled to representation and protection from tyranny, I pledge not only to myself and the Human Rights Commission, the community, to stand honorably on behalf of the oppressed. Thank you. So hopefully this is just the beginnings, and I have some ideas about what I'd like to do. I don't know if you would prefer a formal format, an email, or if you'd like to ask questions or have me discuss it now, whatever you think. But I'm dedicated to this cause, and whatever the Human Rights Commission needs of me, I'm here.
Okay.
Of course.
Any questions for Jordan? I can only say that I know we're transitioning, and so we're not sure what we're going to need in the next month or two or
Sure.
6 months. But I have a feeling we're going to need a lot. And I welcome you. Anybody else? Any thoughts?
Would you like to share with us some of your ideas of what you have come up with that you think you'd like to
do for the commission? Sure, yeah. So there was a clause, if you will, on the page of the duties that the Human Rights Commission is set out to do. And I'd like to sort of focus on this piece here, which says, make periodic public reports and recommendations to the City Council and City Administrator on ways to improve city government programs and ordinances designed to eliminate discrimination or to remove the effects of past discrimination. So I think it's true, we all know this, it's like post-claim, what happens, right? So litigation doesn't necessarily promote healing, but how can we as a community establish resources for those who have filed a claim with the commission, whether it's dismissed or pursued, to say these are people that you should be in contact with to further the progress and sort of build a oneness as community. So I have some ideas about who those organizations might be, but of course I'm willing to do more research on this, right? And I think once I can kind of tap into the resources that the commission has available to them currently, it may give me a clearer idea of where to go from there. So essentially just combining grassroots efforts with this sort of quasi-governmental institutions, right? To evaluate the impacts of marginalization, and then further, as I said, getting in contact and establishing relationships as a representative of the Human Rights Commission with said individuals. So I'm thinking Muslim Social Services, the Ozone House, Community Action Network, and really making sure that we as servants of the public are one, holistic. Of course.
Do you know how long you're going to be in the area?
Right. Well, so I'm born and raised Ann Arbor and still here. I would say, I have no intentions on leaving at this moment. Yeah.
The reason I asked is because I took a leave from being on Student Advocacy Center's board because I was over-committed.
Sure.
And we would love to have someone like you on that board if you are interested.
Okay, yeah.
If you can leave some contact information, and I'll contact Perry
Okay,
and let her interview you and try to move forward from there.
fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Surely.
I have a feeling you'll have some other ideas when we're done at the end of this meeting. But
Yes.
thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay. Conflict of interest declarations, we're on administrative things now. Please note that if you've all received what I have, if you have to change them, please let me know, and if you don't have to change them, let me know that too, so that I don't assume that just because I haven't heard from you that, because this is something that we are required to do by our bylaws. This is on Google Docs, and David has explained to me how to do that, and it's still not clear to me.
Sure, so would you like us to send you changes, or would you like us to change it directly on Google Docs? Either way, I think would work just fine, but.
Can everybody
What's your-
access Google Docs? If they can't, they have to, everybody's got to be able to access it.
I was able to access the document, the link to the document that you included in your email message, and was able to change right on the document.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if anybody else has changed anything, but,
No, I think you're the only one
yeah, let me
so
double
far.
check and see if that change actually stuck. The last time I looked, it had. But I'm happy to take a look here.
'Cause that is something we should be able to access. Mostly, people recuse themselves from a conversation themselves. But I think theoretically, it's important for us to be able to look on Google Docs, and if we have any question, should this person not be involved? So it is good. Vivian, did you put that out? Are you the person who put it on Google Docs?
No.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's in Google Drive. If you click, if you click it, yeah, and it's a document within Google Drive. And I'm looking, and actually now that I've just reopened the document, it doesn't look like the changes that I entered in for myself did stick. It had earlier, but maybe I've now just accessed the old version, which is strange. It's supposed to just update and automatically save. Why don't I send you those changes, and if you're keeping a master document, then
okay.
that's fine.
But who
with me.
can, okay.
I don't know, that's strange. I just updated
You
mine,
updated
and
yours?
it said all changes saved in Drive, so.
Okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I know that what I'm looking at here is showing my old place of
You
employment.
just did it? Okay.
Just now.
Yeah.
We'll work on it.
We'll work
work
on
on
it.
it.
Okay.
And reopen it. But
Okay, but that is the place for it. Okay, and that should be done sometime this month for everybody. Election of officers. Linda?
Leslie asked me to do this since I think I'm the only former officer here right now.
Who's not?
of the commission. So Leslie and David have very kindly offered to continue serving in their role as chair and vice chair, but we need to know first if anybody else wants to put their name forward for either of those positions or wants to nominate somebody else who is willing to do it.
I would be willing to run for vice chair.
For vice chair, okay. Anybody else? Okay. So the next part is we were told in no uncertain terms that we cannot use, and I probably should have mentioned this first, we're not permitted to use a secret ballot in any way. So this election has to be done completely transparently. We can either do it by a show of hands, we can go around, and vote
Or ayes and
individually on
nays.
each one, ayes and nays.
Is there any room for me to say short something before we take a public vote?
I'm sorry, what?
Is there any time for me to say something in
good
support of my
idea.
candidacy before
Sure,
we
of
vote?
course, yes.
So I joined the commission a few years ago because of the police oversight issue. And since I've joined the commission, I came up with the idea of the flyer. I spearheaded the idea. I was the one that created it, put it up on the website. I got someone to do a French translation of the complaint form that was also put on the website. I attended a media meeting last January with a few of you where Rick Ratliff came up with the idea to have presentations like this one that we just had. I also participated in multiple conference calls with Brad O'Fury, designed to really sort of write out what the job description for the LGBTQ advisor to the mayor should look like. I attended a listening session, participated in the listening session. I met with, concerned activists before the work session that we had with Hilliard Hines. I spoke and had substantive questions at the work session. I attended a private meeting with some of us and Howard Lazarus about the task force. I volunteered for the subcommittee meeting to select members from the task force. I also attended a trespass meeting recently this week with members of this, with a few members of this committee, and also Ariane Slade, city attorney. I've attended multiple council meetings. Was one to inform the Human Rights Commission about a budget meeting concerning where the task force was discussed. And I also recently spoke in an Ann Arbor Dems panel along with the mayor and a member of TJW on behalf of the Human Rights Commission. I think that I have demonstrated that I am very committed to the Human Rights Commission, that I have consistently not only showed up to meetings, and I've put in extra time on multiple issues, and I have been a committed and involved member. I've actively tried to come up with ideas and with different ways for us to innovate and progress. And I also think that it is important for the leadership of a body like the Human Rights Commission to be representative of some of the diversity that we see in this community as well.
David?
Sure. Thank you. I have enjoyed serving in the role of vice chair the last year. My main contributions in that role have been to serve as is to preside over these meetings in Leslie's absence, which happened, I think, happily only 2 times, and called, actually, one of them was quite a timely one. It was as we were getting ready to choose the membership for the task force, or at least take nominations. I've got a lot of experience in running meetings. I'm comfortable with process, Robert Rules of Order. Also, I spent a lot of time this past year consulting with Leslie and others, preparing for meetings, thinking about issues, helping draft documents that became draft documents that the commission ultimately reviewed. And I feel that the work that I do on the commission dovetails very nicely with the work that I do full-time at the University of Michigan's Office for Institutional Equity. And so what I bring to the commission from that perspective, I think can help in terms of being part of the leadership of the commission in its week-to-week and month-to-month responsibilities. I will also add that I think Vivian would make an excellent vice chair, and if a majority of the people feel that she should, perfectly fine with that. But I also am happy to serve and would be honored if you selected me to serve again.
I'm glad
So, okay, I guess Leslie, there's, no reason for you to speak.
I think not.
Okay, well, so how would you like to proceed? Should we do it by, well, first of all, why don't we start with chair, since that's easy. All in favor of voting for Leslie to continue to serve as chair? Raise your hands. All opposed? Okay. Congratulations,
Thank
Leslie.
you.
So how should we do this? I guess we'll say whoever would like to support Vivian as vice chair, raise your hands and we'll count. Okay, David? Looks like Vivian, what was that, 4 and 4?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, great.
I don't think you, did you?
Was that 4 and 4?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
He didn't vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, my goodness.
Abstention.
In favor one over the other.
Oh, great. Okay, so we have an abstention.
What do we do?
2 vice chairs? A vice chair and
I don't have a problem, co-vice chairs. I don't know.
co-vice chairs? I mean, you know,
Let them alternate months then. One even, one odd,
or half a year on and
or
off.
half a year, whichever.
What do you think about that?
I think it could work.
It's more support for Leslie.
I could use more support.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Vivian, what do you think?
I have no opinion on that.
You what?
I have no opinion.
No
on the
opinion.
divide.
What about you, David?
I would be comfortable with that. You know, I'm also, you know, since it's split down the middle, I'm actually comfortable withdrawing my nomination to resolve the issue. So I will go ahead and do that and withdraw my nomination.
Okay. You sure, David, you're comfortable with that?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Vivian, congratulations. and Thank you very
congratulations.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will be
Okay.
getting together soon. Thank you. Okay. Communications. A couple things occurred to me about this, but why don't we start with what's going on, Vivian? With communications.
With communications, nothing much has changed.
So we're still getting just a Twitter and Facebook announcement for the meetings, is that?
Yes.
Okay. It seems to me it's time for website traffic report. I don't know who we got that from, Lisa Wandrish. That was kind of interesting. I want to know if it's going up, given the fact that we've been awfully in the news for the last 6 months, and if it hasn't, then it means that people don't know where, it'll tell us something. So I'd like to get us,
All it requires is an email to Lisa.
Okay.
She'll
okay.
send it.
Who do we have, I associate you and Vivian with this.
I think either you or Linda got the last report from Lisa.
Did we? Okay,
Either way,
okay. So I ask Lisa.
just send her an email, yeah.
The other thing that I was thinking about in terms of, another thing was flyers, and I see that I need to produce more. I just gave Mohammed a whole handful of flyers that we have in Arabic and in English, so I think that community hasn't seen enough flyers about the Human Rights Commission. But I will produce more in English. But think about continue to think about where we put them. I have a feeling that wherever we put them in the past are no longer there, and we probably still need them. But for me, the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about and thought we should at least touch on in this meeting is the mailing list. The mailing list turns out to be a very powerful tool. We've got about 300 people and groups on the mailing list. And Jordan said she wanted to do grassroots stuff. When something happens having to do with human rights, for a lot of and last year, it was a lot of things with Hillard Hines that had to do with this process. But the process is going to continue, and there still will be opportunities. And we've started bringing the community together on human rights and keeping them informed. And I think that's really important to have us continue to do that and to build up that list. So I hope that all of you are looking for new people, keep adding people. When you see somebody who's interested, I'm adding people who are on our meeting list. Not the students, but everybody else. And maybe I should do it for the students too. I don't know.
I have a question. So how often do we use the mailing list? I know that we've used it a few times recently to solicit participation in the listening session and the work session. But other than those times, when is it really used?
We also used it for the survey, for announcing, just letting people know what was happening. For the task force, that's how we recruited for the task force. What else? For the joint session. I mean, we are using it quite often, actually, and we're able to, because it's our mailing list. The city has a mailing list of about 400 people. We have, and ours is almost as big, and ours are probably not very. We're probably not covering the same populations. But our populations, we still haven't gotten deep enough into the communities that we're interested in.
So I know that we're not allowed to have our own Facebook page, and we're not allowed to post to Twitter ourselves because of the city policy, but we can send out substantive messages in mailing list form.
No one has said we couldn't, yes.
Okay.
That's what we have been doing.
Okay. I mean, have we thought about using it more frequently, like instead of just like when big things come up? Because there are some things that I think we've talked about in the past that we would have liked to inform people of, but the city has shut them down and said, like, this is not a government link, this is not a media link, and there might be things that we can send out that way instead of using social media, or even send out regularly like links to CTN, being like, if you missed this meeting, here's a convenient link to it. Like, and you
I think
can
we
see
want to be a little careful about not overusing it, because there are a lot of people on there who we don't actually know if they even want to be on it, and so we don't know exactly how interested.
If they don't want to be on it, they can always ask to
Right, but I
unsubscribe.
mean, it's one thing to get a message when something really meaty and important is happening. It's another thing just to be notified of upcoming meetings about pretty much everything. So I guess we just have to decide, but it's a thought for sure.
It's still a little kludgy, but among other things, because it's, I don't know, it says from the Human Rights Commission to the Human Rights Commission. I mean, we have to make it look nicer if we're going to do it a lot.
Could we do something with, for example, soliciting applications for the LGBTQ liaison to the mayor?
Well, if
We'll
that's,
get to that.
we'll get to that, but I think that the job is filled.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, certain, there are things like that we could certainly do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other thing we could do is put on Facebook and Twitter that if you want to stay, if you want to be on the HRC mailing list, please let us know. And I have done that in some of the emails.
Yeah, is there any way, do we say anything on our website about joining the mailing list?
No, it's a good idea.
Good idea. I don't think we have.
No.
Yes, that would be nice. So having a mailing list, maybe having a newsletter. I mean, maybe that's a brief, this is what's happening once a month or something.
Or when we make substantive additions to the website, like when we translated the complaint form and flyer into Arabic, I feel like that's something that maybe people don't check because it's in a list of links of different complaint forms, and so we might want to say, like, the complaint form exists in these languages, so if you know people who don't speak English, like, there are these other options.
That's right.
Right. So there are certainly things we can do on that, and that, again, might be something Jordan wants to get involved with.
Yeah, thanks, Vivian. Those are really creative ideas.
Yeah, very creative ideas. So But still, among other things, keep in mind that we are always looking for people who should be on our mailing list, and share that with me, and at this point, I'll just add them. But maybe we'll get something more systematic and less clumsy. Contractor compliance, just a word about that. We have, one of our responsibilities is an annual report to our about contractor compliance. Pam and I have started that process. It's something that we do with purchasing, who has the sort of the list of all the contractors and the contacts. But what we want to do is make sure that contractors to the city are aware, that their people are aware of the rights they have while working in the city, that they're part of that the non-discrimination ordinance does apply to them, and how to complain if there are violations. Status of complaints. Pam, do you want to start with that?
Sure. There were two, I'm aware of two complaints. One, excuse me, came into the HRC email, which I believe both Leslie and I responded to. It's non-jurisdictional for us, but the person responded back to Leslie's response, letting them know that it was non-jurisdictional for us, but asking for additional resources. And I responded back to the individual just today, giving that individual additional resources to address the concern that she initially presented to the commission. So that's one. The other is a phone call that came in, and I apologize because I wasn't as zealous in checking the phone as I have been in the past, but this came in last week, so we're not too greatly untimely. We give ourselves 6 months, but
Yeah.
we know that that's not going to happen. We'll respond definitely much sooner. So the request that came in is something that I'm actually going to present to the commission. I did a brief query, but it didn't yield for me the information that I wanted. The question came in from a gentleman who shall remain nameless, stating that especially as prom season approaches, there are individuals who want to rent hotels, and they are being prohibited by the hotels because they are not 21. There, in my brief inquiry of what governs, state law says as long as they are 18, they are permitted, but it is at the discretion of the hotels to make the determination that they can or will rent to them at 18.
Is it between 18 and 21?
Well, there are some hotels that will let you rent at 16. There's no prohibition for them to say that they can't. But I did a more of a national inquiry, and this seems to be the consensus. Most hoteliers will rent as long as you are 18 and demonstrate that you have the ability to pay. Typically, what has governed is that parents are renting the rooms on behalf of the individuals because they, of course, have the money. But the question that came into the HRC phone line was, does the city of Ann Arbor have any policy that speaks to that? And I'm pretty sure there is not, because it is at the discretion of the hoteliers. So I'm presenting this to the commission because this individual wants a response, and I have not responded to them at all. So attorneys who are on the commission, maybe you want to take a stab at this?
I think this is something we should do a little more homework on and respond to.
Before prom time, huh?
There's nothing that compels them to do it, but, you know, the law says at 18 you're considered a legal adult, and so you can enter into, you know, certain contracts and be held liable for them. But this individual would like a response, so.
And is
Well,
this
and remember,
discrimination?
Yeah, we have to focus on what
But
we're
is
here
it?
for. Is
But
it
is it?
is it
Yeah.
discrimination?
Well,
That's the question.
the individual
Right.
asked, is this age discrimination? Now,
Right.
under,
Yeah.
under the Age Discrimination Act, ADEA, that only speaks to individuals who are 40 and over. It does not speak to anyone 39 and younger. So you can't really apply age discrimination in this sense unless they're saying it's reverse discrimination, but there's no legal standing to my knowledge.
But our
that-
ordinance says
What
no
about our
discrimination
local,
on the basis of age.
It
I mean,
says
it
age.
doesn't,
It says age.
it doesn't
Well, we
say,
can run it by
It
the city
doesn't-
attorney's office.
yes,
Yeah.
we could.
You know, we're not supposed to
And what about
play
Elliot
lawyers.
Larson, right? Does it not address age?
Don't
I think
know.
it does address age, but it doesn't. I'm not
And we'd have to look at the
positive.
definition under Elliot Larson
I
as well.
actually
I
probably,
don't know.
I mean, it just could be that no one's ever challenged it. So,
Well, we have individuals from the ACLU. What's your
I think it
thought?
sounds like a
Well-
project.
Why not take advantage of the?
well, no, I don't have it with me. But if Elliot Larson, I assume Elliot Larson is it is allowed to have a law that says not until 18. But if there's no law, then does that mean that if you're 18, you should be able to, or automatically, is there a default?
Right, why, but doesn't the law currently say it's at the discretion of the hotel?
Yeah,
Right, so
I
that
think if
would
it's at
be
the
a law
discretion,
that
maybe
might
it's
need
the.
to be challenged because it allows hotels to discriminate based on, yeah.
And the individual gave a little bit more, just for the commission's information, the voicemail is saved on the phone. So if you want to listen to the voicemail and get additional information. But this individual stated that the students who want to rent the hotel rooms are having to go so far afield that it defeats the purpose for them to rent the room. So like further out, they're finding success with hoteliers who are willing to rent to them at 18, and not hold them to the 21 or older standard. So this individual is seeking knowledge about, is there anything the city has, or is there anything our commission can assist them with to address this concern?
Well, I would suggest, I know it's red tape for them, but for them just to quickly fill out a complaint form.
Yeah.
And do it more formally, and then we can run it by the city attorney's office.
Okay.
Right.
So I can respond back to them. I'll do that tomorrow with the
Thank you.
individual. And if they give me an email address, then I will just email them from the HRC email, the form.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
And it would definitely be helpful for them to identify what hotels they have attempted to, lease a room at, so
Yeah,
we
make sure
can
it's in
check
the
double
city.
jurisdiction.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll note that Elliot Larson apparently, age is a protected category, but it prohibits discrimination in Michigan on the basis of a number of protected classes, including age, in employment, housing, education, and access to public accommodations. And so the question is a hotel, is having access to a hotel access to a public
I
accommodation?
think so.
Yes.
Yes, it would be.
Hotels are considered
I think it
public
is, I think.
accommodations.
You can look at the definition of public accommodation.
Yeah.
There.
That footnote doesn't make it clear, but.
No.
Oh,
Okay, that'll be an interesting one. Anything else about complaints? Let's move to LGBTQ liaisons. As I told you, Vivian, when you asked, and I was concerned also, I called Brad O'Fury and I called Sergeant Dawn Murphy, thank you. And talked to both of them and found out that Corrine is actually on top of this very much. So Corrine, please report.
So I apologize for not reporting, I guess, to the HRC overall. I'm just all over the place. And I guess I've had to work with the liaisons in a lot of the work that I do because I do a lot of work with Neutral Zone and the Jim Toy Community Center, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've had meetings with Dawn, in her attempts to meet with the teams more. And I, you know, when Brad didn't show up at our last meeting, I just kind of said, here are all the things that are supposed to be on your agenda that we need your support on. And he kind of indicated, okay, I am, you know, with my, even though I'm back in Michigan, I realize I cannot, you know, handle this. And so I immediately reached out to the mayor, and because I know that the mayor had already had someone in mind, and because we need someone in this role. And so his receptionist, I don't know, scheduled a meeting on April 6th with the individual that he wanted to replace Brad, who is Travis Redina. And we went over the roles and responsibilities that, you know, Vivian and I created when, you know, Brad was first appointed to the position, because Travis wasn't sure he wanted to do it because, you know, he thought it might be too much responsibility. And so he was comfortable with it, and we talked about the fact that, you know, there's kind of a living task list that we need to get current now and work on. And Travis is already scheduled to report to this committee or commission, whatever, in June, because he's also the chair of the Jim Toy Community Center.
That's right.
So he was already planning, you know, to report to us. But we can schedule a meeting sooner. To make sure that his agenda reflects whatever current goals we have in mind, because he now has the original agenda that we set up with Brad, who I believe reported to us once, but, you know, other than that, I don't think he's reported to us, so.
Well, I have to tell you that both Brad and Sergeant Murphy said you were fabulous, that you had been involved in lots of negotiation with them, for example, over Pride Week. Is it Pride Week or
it's a month.
The event? The events. That Sergeant Murphy also has a job description, and those were things we wanted, because we wanted to make sure that this wasn't just a fly-by-night appointment, that we really had agreed on, or they had agreed on doing something.
Right. And to be fair, we know that the current chief of police is transitioning out now, and he had never, I don't think he had ever finalized his approval of what we drafted for the LGBT liaison to the police department. And so that was something we were continuing to meet on, and I was just like, have you had a chance to look at it? What do you think? You know, are there any suggested changes? But we know now that that chief will be, you know, transitioning out. So that is still something that needs to be
Well, she
formally
said she was
accepted
working
by
with
the
it with
chief.
Acting Chief Fannis.
Okay, good to know.
So she's doing,
Good to
and
know.
I asked her if she would come and present to us, and she said she would talk to him about it. She thinks so. So I think we've actually made very good progress.
Yeah, it would be nice if she reported to us, because one of the things that is on the agenda for the police department, and this is something I was working with the Outlaws at the law school on, is improving the diversity and cultural sensitivity training for the police department, and making sure all the police were trained, because of the high turnover. I guess all of the police hadn't received appropriate training in years, and just there are new things culturally that they should be trained on. And so that was a big deal, and, you know, we would continually be asked, well, what trainers do you propose? And, you know, we sent them a lot of names, but we don't know who they actually ended up choosing, and as part of the accreditation process, they knew they needed to do that, but I actually don't know what has happened with that, and it's kind of why I wanted an LGBT liaison to the mayor to be, you know, more active here, because I want to know what happened with that, because I know the training was supposed to be planned about now, and, you know, so I would love to have her come and give us an update on what they're doing.
That would be good. And that's something, by the way, that's happening throughout the southeastern Michigan, and there are track records that they can look at from other departments that have had this kind of training here and elsewhere.
Corinne, just to be clear, so Travis has both accepted and the mayor has actually officially appointed him?
And that is my understanding
That's what Brad
from
told
that
me, too.
meeting. And
Travis,
Travis,
since you know Travis, it seems like, or have been in contact with Travis, would you mind contacting Lisa? Because I've just checked both the Human Rights Commission webpage and also the mayor's webpage, and it still says that Brad's the contact.
right, this meeting was last Friday, I think. So it's very fresh, and it's part of like why I haven't thought about it since the meeting, and now I am thinking about it, and I will, you know, happy to report to you all. And as sort of help get the ball rolling. I don't know who Lisa is. I'm not the communication person. I usually tell Leslie who
Yeah.
will forward it to someone.
Okay.
So do you want me to just forward?
Yeah, no,
if you
I've got a
wanted
lot to talk to Lisa about,
Okay.
or somebody
So I
does.
will get you
That would
the information.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. And it is on, I said that it wasn't on the police website. I think I told you that because I couldn't find it where I would have expected it, but it evidently is on the police website, so.
No, it's on the, so.
It's
the
under community
LGBT
engagement,
Oh,
she
it
said.
is, okay.
On their website. On our website, it is on, there's a section on LGBTQ liaisons, and they're both talked about. Both, at least Sergeant Murphy and Brad. But that will change.
Just a quick point of information, and you may have said this, I want to be clear, it's Travis Radina?
Yes.
Okay.
Like RAD?
R-A-D-I-N-A.
Yes.
So Corinne, do you think that we should ask him to come in May to speak to us, or meeting?
He's already coming.
He actually
he's
is
already
already
coming
coming
in
in
June,
his,
I
but
think
she
it's
does- she
June that
asked.
I think he's scheduled to speak to us in June because that's
Yeah.
Pride Month
Right.
anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
I
He
can
mentioned
certainly
maybe
ask,
wanting to
and if it doesn't meet his schedule, maybe we can do a smaller meeting with him, just like we did with Brad, right?
Yeah.
So, absolutely, if not May, then a smaller meeting, just so we can get the ball rolling on things.
Okay. Well, it has the additional advantage of his being very well connected in the community. And that's something we want for that role.
Yes.
So there's a lot of opportunity here, and we have to think about how we can help him maximize it, or ask him that when he comes and when she comes. Okay, I think that handles our administrative issues. Now, the next thing is the Community Policing Task Force update. Do you have information for us, Dwight?
Very little.
I have some too, but what do you have?
We've been trying to organize a meeting, a first meeting, and it's going to be on the 20th
Okay.
of this month. That was just finalized a couple of days ago. The chairs are trying to meet with individuals as soon as they can in advance of that meeting. I will be meeting with them apparently tomorrow morning. I received that notice while I'm sitting here with you. That's about all I can say.
The only thing I can add to it is that city administrator said that the primary tasks at the first meeting are the setting up of the schedule, explaining the rules of a public body, swearing in members, and otherwise getting the task force's sea legs. He also made it clear to me that this is going to follow the rules of commissions, and there
Yeah.
will be open meetings
Yes, and it will be an open meeting. It's going to be here in this room.
in this room.
In this room. I believe it is from 5:30 scheduled to 7:30 on the 20th.
It definitely
Which is
said-
the
he
first
says it
Friday
starts at
meeting I've had
5:30.
in about 25 years. So, yeah.
Okay, April 20th, so anybody can come, and there probably will be public comment as well, given it's,
Is that at 7 PM?
it starts at 5:30.
5:30.
5:30 PM,
5:30.
5:30 to 7. Thank you.
April
Surely.
20th. Friday. Thank you. Report on trespass. Linda, Vivian, Pam, and I met with City Attorney Arian Slay on Monday, I think, and talked about trespass, and I would like to circulate, I want somebody to give an overview of what that was, or let's talk about it, and I also have some questions. We want some input from you. And Linda has written these questions, and I'm going to just pass them out so you can look at them while we're having this discussion. because we will now, this is the time when we will go back to those people, or to the police, and find out more about what we need to know. But what did we one of the things we learned is that trespass has two pieces. One is the reading of trespass, and one is the charge of trespass.
Yeah, as I understood it, reading trespass is different from criminal trespass. Criminal trespass is, a criminal charge, and reading trespass is more, it's not like a civil infraction, it's sort of like a warning, a citation that carries the potential of criminal consequences.
Yeah. But it has the, I think what, at least, if correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what got our attention to begin with is that when a policeman who's acting as an agent either of the city and the police force or of an entity like the AATA or other sort of public accommodation, pseudo-public, private kinds of places are authorized to decide to read trespass. What they are saying to somebody is, when I read you this notice, you cannot come back to this place for at least a year. And so that police officer is sort of judge and jury at that moment about what this person can and can't do for the next year. And that raises some due process issues, at least for me. What Ariane told us, which is true, this police officer could, instead of reading trespass, go ahead right away and charge that person with trespass.
But there wouldn't be due process
There would then
rights
be due
with a criminal
process.
charge.
Yes,
and
right.
apparently not with
There
being
would be then
trespass,
due process, although then that person would be part of, have to go through the court system. So it has a, so I
Right,
think
so-
our thinking was that ideally, if they're going to continue with this trespass notice, at the very least, there has to be a right to appeal on the bottom so that if somebody is read trespass, they know they have some recourse to challenge it.
So
That's where we are, I think.
And I think one of the things that bothered us most is when we were talking about the AATA, we stressed the fact that we believed it functioned like a public accommodation.
Right.
And I think the city attorney admitted that. But they said also that because the AATA actually physically owns the land, that any appellate rights would come from the AATA itself and not from the city, and that the city and police had no position on appellate rights, and that appellate rights wouldn't come from the city or the police, even though the police would be the ones making the determination of trespass in the first place. There wouldn't be any, you couldn't appeal to the police, you'd have to appeal to the AATA because they function like a private company owning private land, even though they are a public accommodation, which I think was confusing to most of us because that makes no sense.
And surely confusing to the person charged, especially because there's nothing on the form that says
Especially
anything
because
about appeal.
the form that we've all seen identifies itself as a police form. And, it cites law and it says that we, the police, are telling you that you cannot come back. So I don't really understand how, upon reading that form, a layperson would be like, I need to go talk to the property owner for my appellate rights.
Right.
Instead of going to the city or the police. And they seem to say that, you would just have to go to talk to a property owner. None of this is on us. We have nothing to do with this after the police makes an independent decision. It's no longer our thing, and we have no control over this.
So we thought what we would do is, Mr. Lazarus was at our meeting, and what he thought, since Ms. Slay from the city attorney's office is relatively new and actually didn't have that much information on how the police and in what circumstances read trespass, she had sort of other issues related to that she did know about. It was decided that we would come up with, I think, a list of questions that we would run through Mr. Lazarus, who would send them to the police department to get more information about how and where and when the police use these forms, get a current copy of the form that they're using, make sure the one that we are seeing is the one they're using, and then go from there to see how it can be changed or improved.
Yeah, another interesting thing that came up was that apparently the police form cites, instead of the MCL, that's for criminal trespass, it cites the MSA, the Michigan Annotated Statutes. And the wording was slightly different, like there was a mens rea element of willfully entering the land, and I know the difference, and the city attorney informed me that's because that wasn't the MCL, and that's not actually law, but it's on the form that's given to people who supposedly are red trespass. So I have a lot of questions about the trespass form as it now exists.
Yeah.
And what it really informs people of.
Right.
Well, one of the things we're thinking is that it's probably used a lot. We're not sure, but it sounded like from the examples Ms. Slay was giving us that it's used a lot. We want to make it understandable to the populace and make it clear to anybody who's read trespass what it means to them and what they can do about it. Most of them, we assume, are probably reasonable, but some people, but because it's such a, it could be abused, and we don't want it to be abused. And there were questions about it, if you remember, in the Blake Transit situation, and that's what started our interest in this.
I can't pretend to be objective on this issue. So now I need clarification. What I'm hearing, and I'm sure that I'm mishearing, is that a policeman can, with no identifiable violation, read trespass?
So that was unclear. I was asking the question with regards to the Blake Transit Center incident, and City Attorney Slade kept on repeating that since that happened before she was an attorney here, she had no idea what the situation was, but she was sure that a violation occurred, and that she was also, I think, sure that the police officer could have cited him for charged him with a felony instead.
As a black male, umpteen times in my life, we have heard "move along" from a policeman. For no identifiable violation. This is more than offensive. But again, I'm not an attorney. I don't want to hear that a policeman can tell you you're trespassing and you haven't broken any rule other than look ugly.
But there is a violation of not obeying a police officer's legal request
But
also.
only if it's a legal command. And so the question is, was the command to leave legal?
Yeah.
And we don't have an answer to that.
But that's wasn't the charge either. That charge is a crime. I mean, that charge has a fine involved, right?
Yeah, felony obstruction.
It's a felony. So this is, I think, used in where they don't want to give it, they don't want to go as far as a felony.
But as with felony obstruction, we all agree that there are three categories where you can be red trespass. One has to do with farmlands. This was the city, farmlands.
We don't have farmlands.
Aren't applicable. It's not about asking for permission to enter someplace because it's a public it's a public accommodation. He didn't need to have permission to be there. It's about whether or not he was asked to leave, and whether he disobeyed a lawful order to leave. And I think the question that I have, at least at this point, is what right do the police have to tell him to leave?
Yes.
Right.
And we still don't have any answers because the city attorney said that she was there for an abstract discussion of what reading trespass meant, but not a specific discussion about the Blake Transit Center.
But there's nothing in the statute that spells out what has to happen what constitutes trespass, except that somebody asked you to leave and you didn't.
Yes,
The owner asked you to leave, whoever, the owner or the agent.
Yeah, but I think it can't just be a random request. It can't be I don't like how you look, leave. It has to be something more than that.
But it doesn't say what it has to be.
It doesn't say what it has to be, but I think the language of the criminal trespass statute gives enough guidance to say that it has to be a legal command to leave, I think.
Okay.
And I just think, from my experience, which is limited, that historically that this has been used for, people you don't like what they look like. They're hanging around a little too long. They didn't order anything. You know, they were playing video games, but now they're out of money and just kind of sitting around talking, and they can't afford a movie ticket. But you know what I mean? It's been used repeatedly just to clear areas. And I mean, from what my understanding of the Blake Transit Center incident is that there had been a fight and they were clearing teens from the area. But this was early in the school year, and maybe he didn't know where the next bus stop was, and was that, you know what I mean? We don't know what was going on in this kid's head. At the time, maybe he just didn't know where to go or how long he had to leave, or maybe he came back. But whatever the situation, I think there is an issue where people can be asked to leave for no reason, you know what I mean? Or to them, it looks like no reason, because they have no idea that they have no right to be in this restaurant or bus depot or place where they usually are, you know, and then have no way to challenge that without actually getting arrested.
Exactly.
You know, like she said, you don't say, oh, I need to go talk to the bus depot about my appellate rights. But, you know, if you go there in person, you're under arrest, right? So it is a
Catch-22.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will
And-
always remember how shocked I was when I heard that young man was asked to leave and the fight was between girls and not boys.
Right.
It just took my breath away.
There's no question, they were not part of the fight.
Well, part of the discussion that we had that was enlightening to me was the fact that AATA has contracted with the city police to provide that service. So there is a person who is physically stationed at the bus station. It is a contractual arrangement, but it is not a paid contractual arrangement, is what I learned. But AATA has requested the City of Ann Arbor Police Department to provide that service. So that was one thing. The other is that Attorney Slay mentioned that there is no, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is no trespass. There's nothing in the city ordinance that speaks to trespass. So she is actually in the process of drafting language to implement that so that that is a part of the city ordinance. And we have some more definitive language that speaks to what actually constitutes trespass and what is violative thereof. My question to her was, how then do you communicate that to the general public so that they don't find out after the fact that they're now in violation of something that they had no knowledge of? I don't know that I ever got a clear answer about that.
I think she's using the same language.
I do too.
From the state in the city ordinance, but the fine will be lower, and they will be able to walk in at their convenience within 15 days to deal with it as a ticket.
I don't think the fine will be necessarily lower, but she has more discretion.
Oh, you're right.
If
That's right.
it's in the
That's
city,
right.
if they're charged in the city ordinance and in the state ordinance. But I do think, so like the point of putting it in the city ordinance, even though it exists in the state, in the MCL anyways, is that instead of having to go through the process of like reading the charges to a magistrate and getting the warrant signed and everything, and having warrants maybe sent to old addresses on file that don't match, and then having bench warrants issue for people that don't show up to the arraignment and everything, they could instead just issue a citation that they give to the person when they are cited for trespass that already has the information about the first appearance in court and everything.
Yeah.
So the idea is, if we include it in the city ordinance, for some reason that allows you to write a citation with all the information instead of going through all the rigmarole that could potentially expose you to bench warrants and the fines that come therewith. But I do think that, Pam asked questions about how do we educate people about trespass, and I think the response was, it's a repeat offender situation. There aren't any new people being swept up. It's not an issue. Which is not.
No,
How do
it's
we
not enough.
That's a lot of what I heard her
No,
saying.
I
that-
realize, and I think it is. I think a lot of homeless people, a lot of people who are drunk and disorderly.
But also people obviously that's untrue, because we have the situation at Blake Transit Center. So saying that they're all repeat offenders anyway, so they already know what's going on, isn't really responsive to the specific concerns.
And that may be one of the questions you want to add to this list that I passed out.
Right, so, yeah.
Because what we want to do is do the homework and then figure out what is a better way. Because I think we all agree with Dwight that this is something, and Corinne, that this is something that is has a potential for abuse, maybe has been abused. Okay, probably has been abused.
And according to Attorney Slay, she had no statistical data, but what she referenced was that the documentation that they have is quite thick, that this is something that happens often. And when we asked her to be more specific, she said, probably daily.
Yeah. And it's nuisance. And remember, this is charging somebody with trespass as opposed to reading, so it's more serious. It's the second part of this. It involves, for me, conceptually, not being an attorney, it sounded like your first brush with this might be, would you please leave? And if you don't, or if what you're doing is so offensive that you absolutely have to leave, then you are charged. And the charge has a fine and an arraignment and, it's on your record, it's a felony. Whereas the reading is sort of a warning.
Is a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor.
It's a misdemeanor,
not a
okay.
felony.
I'm glad you said that. That was what I thought originally.
Yeah, I think obstruction is a felony, but criminal trespass is a misdemeanor.
And for most of the people we're talking about, or for what we think we're talking about, if they're homeless, it's a problem. I mean, we don't want to keep finding people who don't have addresses to reach them because they don't show up in court. We don't, and that's what I think.
And I think that, the idea of putting it in the city ordinance so that city attorneys have more discretion about fines and have ability to, tell people at the outset what their court dates are, a lot of that makes sense, but I think I think that we still have a lot of other questions that just were not answered, like what populations do this affect? Do you have any statistical data? It seems like there is, but no one's actually, it's all just raw data. None of it's been collected, and there's an option for someone to collect it and someone to look at it, but they've never done that.
And what constitutes trespass? I mean,
what
really are people doing for the most part that gets them in this position? Because
And I think another question we all had too was, we were all confused by the idea that the AATA functions like a public accommodation, but also privately, and whether or not whether or not the AAPD has any other contractual agency relationships with other entities, and two, if there are any other spaces in Ann Arbor that sort of function public-privately too.
Yeah.
And we didn't get an answer to that either.
If you have other questions, you can send them to Leslie. If you want, I'll send you the electronic version of this. You can just add to it, and then either I or Leslie will send them to Mr. Lazarus, who will send them to the APD.
Because this is getting just some statistics from the police department about how serious a problem this might be and what it looks like. And we can then do some more delving into it.
And this may be something that the yet to be determined police commission.
Needless to say, we want to see what the racial components look like.
Yeah.
Well, I actually questioned or brought up additional information in the meeting when I said that individuals who may feel as if they've been singled out for some preferential treatment can certainly exercise their rights in a civil matter, either by filing a complaint, either with us, if they allege that it's discriminatory on one of the bases that is covered under our ordinance, or they can exercise their rights through the civil rights entities, EOC or MDCR, but again, alleging a basis under those two entities, or they can certainly obtain the services of a private attorney and move forward with that. When I said that, Mr. Lazarus said if it's pursued from a civil rights perspective, then he wouldn't necessarily require us to run the questions and the information that we want them to address by him. But if it is not in a civil matter, then he did want us to run the questions and the comments and concerns by him.
Yeah. I think we're talking about civil rights here.
Yeah.
not just police.
But there's still,
And so it's
the
still in
other
our-
comment that I made is that AATA receives federal dollars. And there is yet another opportunity for individuals, if they want to explore contacting OFCCP to see if they are in violation of the contract that they've entered into to receive those federal dollars, because then they can file a complaint with OFCCP alleging that as another alternative to address whatever action that may have been taken against them. So there are other options, but this is the one that we were focusing on in the meeting with Attorney Slay.
Okay, well, if people would please fill out these questions, get us a list of questions to begin doing our homework so that we know what our next step, we can figure out what our next steps should be. That would be very helpful. Let us move on, but clearly we're not going to just drop this. This is, it's important. Okay, annual report. Have people, I have to apologize to everybody. I gave you the annual report. Didn't give you very much time to look at it. What I'd like to do today, I don't think we're going to be able to decide whether, I'll make all the changes and approve or not approve. But I hope everybody will look at it, make changes on it, get back to me, and I will make all the changes and have it for the next meeting. I'd like to be able to approve it or not approve it, to have a final copy to send by the end of the next meeting. When you read it, however, are there any issues that you've seen? Are there any questions that you have about it that we should all talk about before you go back and do an editing job?
Just minor edits. I would note that there was a French complaint form that was translated, and I think it only says right now that there was an Arabic translation of the flyer.
That's right.
And I think we should note both that there was an Arabic and French translation of the complaint form too.
Right, okay. Yeah, actually, I did that because it was 2017, and I think the French was done in 2016.
2017.
Was it? Okay. And French. And also on complaint.
Yeah, for the Arabic too. I think because it just mentions the flyer translations, but I think the complaint translations are also important.
Okay. I can add that.
So Leslie, is the idea that we will send you changes, and then you will get us another draft prior to
Yes.
next month's meeting, incorporating suggested changes?
Yes, and I'll give you enough time so that you can
Okay.
look at that too.
Okay.
Okay? It doesn't have to be a work of art, but it really does have to reflect what we did and what we want to convey to City Council. And that's the purpose of it. Okay. Finally, we talk about a little bit about next steps. And I don't, we certainly have, we have the annual report, we have the contractor annual report, we have a lot to work on the trespass, obviously. We do not know what our next big thing is, and part of me wants to just relax for a few months and not deal with the next big thing, and deal with things as they come. But we need to start thinking about what we want to do. We're not doing, we've got a group now doing police oversight. I don't know how much they're going to require of us. I think we're going to have a member of this commission on that commission once it's formed. But other than that, we're a little bit out of policing right now. So the question is, what do we want to do with our year this year? And one of the things that we have done in the past, and we could do again, is have a strategic planning meeting and think about it. Another thing we could do is just have people keep their eyes out about things that they would like to spend some time on.
Leslie, you said that you think that we're going to have somebody that is going to be on the commission?
Every time we talked about the commission, we talked about having at least one member of the Human Rights Commission on that
I know I did, but I didn't know that the city did.
It's in the report, and I've heard it from the city.
That's
in-
what I
In ways
wanna-
that I
that's
think
what I wanna
they
hear.
definitely have heard it. I mean, they would have to, at this point, say no.
Mm-hmm.
But they have definitely heard it. They know we want to be in it. I think they want us to be on it.
It seems to me that the task force should certainly explicitly address that
Yeah.
issue
Yeah.
as part of its process.
Boy, I would hope so. Because we are an ongoing group, and we want to keep, we want to have somebody looking over their shoulder, other than city staff.
Yeah, I mean, I have no argument. The last time I spoke to city council, and I said, I think there should be an organic contact between us and them, so.
Okay.
But nobody told me that they bought that.
I wouldn't say it's
A fait
something,
accompli.
don't take it for granted.
I won't bet the ranch
But
on it.
pretend it's for granted.
Okay, good.
Assume they all know that. I have heard that. I mean, even the mayor, when the mayor told me that he wasn't going to put me on this task force, he said, you're going to have ongoing input in a lot of different ways. You have had a lot of input, and you will continue to have input. So I'm hearing that. But and think about whether you want a strategic planning. This might be a good time for it. We have had it in the past, and it's always been very helpful. And even though the last one was years and years ago, it's in many ways driven what we've become today. What we don't know is what big thing that before the strategic planning, the last strategic planning, if I remember correctly, was just before we took on the ordinance writing. Is that right?
That could be.
I think it was. But, and we suggest, and it was on, we decided that we wanted to do that as part of the strategic planning.
Right.
But the police oversight came to us. Things do tend to come to us, and we tend to grab them unless we know where we want to go, unless we've chosen. And maybe you want it to be our choosing it. That would make a lot of sense to me.
Could we do something like council does with work session in a less formal, less formal way?
I think we
And
could.
it would still be open to the public, but
Yeah.
More option for like a dialogue?
more, yeah,
maybe?
right, more like the council workroom, right, where we used to have the
Yeah.
meetings right there.
Yeah,
That makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense.
I think that,
Which might be a good thing for us.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, TJW might have ideas of other things
Yeah.
that they're interested in. Seems like a good.
I'm sorry, who might, Vivian?
Yeah, TJW might have
Oh.
ideas of other things that they're interested in, and it might be a really good way for Jordan to introduce us to new projects too.
Okay, so let's,
If we have a light agenda one month, we could even schedule it instead of a meeting, since we're only required to have meetings every other month. But if we're busy,
It's
we
true.
can schedule it as a second meeting.
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I will say one thing now that we began to work on before we really ended up diving very deeply again into the police work. One thing that we have been trying to improve since I have been on the commission is awareness throughout the community about what we do and what services, we provide to them. I began to work on those issues. Rick, you actually were a little bit involved before you were a commissioner in helping us brainstorm about that.
Marketing.
And it may be time now, during a period, at least at the moment, where we don't have a big substantive issue on the horizon, to spend some time thinking about how we might promote ourselves and our services more effectively to the community through using CTN, for example. We actually, I got the mayor to agree to be part of a public service announcement that we began to put together, but we never finished. It just got dropped for a variety of reasons. And so we might want to think about that as something to pick up as a non-substantive project, but more of a procedural community outreach, community awareness type project.
Yeah, just to sort of build on that, it seems like it would be useful not just to focus on what we do, but on making people aware of their rights.
Yes, the ordinance itself
Yeah.
and the services that, basically the complaint function, and our role in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I will note that when I went to the Ann Arbor Dems meeting and spoke on a panel with the mayor and TGW, they seemed really interested in the issue and explicitly said that they would appreciate being kept abreast of the situation and would like to see the HRC come again and speak on the issue.
On which issue?
On the police task force issue as it continues.
Oh.
And I think it brings up the idea that maybe we could do the reverse situation of what Rick has pioneered, instead of necessarily asking people to come present to us, having us go out into the world and present to other organizations and say, here we are, this is what we do you have any need of us?
Yeah.
We did do that at
We
one
did.
point in a number, maybe quite a few years ago, and then that just sort of dwindled.
Yes,
Not
we
many
went to-
people would show up, was the
Well,
problem.
we went to faith organizations, and we
Oh, yeah, a
actually
few
did
times.
get fairly
That's true.
good turnouts.
That's right, a couple of times.
I
yeah.
thought we discussed, though, and you brought this up, Leslie, there were two options. You could do, it's like a public service announcement on CTN, or being interviewed, you can actually produce the,
could do that.
the segment where, and so you were contacted by someone, and you were asked if the commission
CTN.
would be, okay. So I thought we were going to, time didn't permit us to act on it at the time
Right.
that you presented it,
Right.
but since then,
could
could
do
we
that.
not reach out to
Absolutely.
them, and then this will reach a broader audience?
Yes.
Absolutely.
By doing, I would like to see you as the chairperson, or anyone else who's maybe interested in, I'm not, in, just putting it out there, producing a segment that talks about what we are and what we do and what we offer and how we can
Yes.
assist the public.
I
So
think
maybe
that
we
would be
can
good.
follow up with that.
That's right. And do not forget community response, which I say in the annual report is a goal for next year, because I think it should be. And maybe you want to vote on, well, we've already voted on that, if I'm not
We did.
mistaken. We have decided that we wanted to do that. And we said that our hate resolution was sort of a beginning of that. So but it's another thing that is grassroots, reaching out to grassroots and addressing, finding out what they need and addressing issues. So there are a lot of, and see, Jordan, there's going to be a lot for you to do. I think there is. So maybe do you want to schedule them now? I mean, is this something we're in agreement with, or do you want to think about it a little longer?
You mean a strategic planning meeting, or?
Or a work session? Or,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
of some sort of what we're going to do next. As this is really definitely a pivotal time, and it's a time where other people, if we don't have something, other people will give us things.
Yeah.
And if you don't know where you're going, you'll go where they want to go.
One question, what does the reference to one community mean?
That's another thing that's conceivably possible. City Administrator Lazarus has mentioned this a number of times. It's some kind of an initiative that is started with, that is countywide, that is talking about structural discrimination and ways in which the municipalities are reinforcing discriminatory outcomes. So it sounds very interesting, but if you go to the website, there's a very nice video, but there isn't much else. City Administrator Lazarus said a number of times, I'd like you to be, this is something you can do next. That's something I think he'd like us to do. But I'm not sure that anybody knows what that something is. And I don't want to be at the mercy of something where they don't know what they're doing. On the other hand, maybe we could be more, more central in it. But it is county-wide. The city administrator said he was for it, the mayor and the video said he was for it, but I'm not sure what they're really talking about. But that's another possibility.
Yeah, I think that, something like a presentation or exchange between these two groups would make a lot of sense, maybe.
I actually tried, I looked on the website to see if I could find a name of somebody I could contact to come and present to us. And that's why I know there's very little there. And in fact, I thought I saw a name at one point, and I don't see that person's name now. So I'm really, I'm sort of at odds. I don't know yet what it is. But it's definitely a possibility. And it's possible that if we put our energy in it, we could trigger things that might not happen otherwise. That would be nice, too. So this is a time of opportunity. Shall we schedule then something? And I'm right now, because so many things are going on, potentially, I'm sort of loath to do it instead of a meeting. You know,
It might be more efficient if you sent out a,
I will do that.
Yeah.
How's that? Yeah.
We have guests coming the next 2 months, is that right?
Yes.
Notice ahead of time, I'm not going to be here for the June meeting. I have a series of lectures that week, and so I'll be out of state.
Okay. And I know you're not being there for May. Okay. And we're starting to get into summer where people may not be here also. But I'll send out a doodle, if you will, and see if we can schedule something. Are you thinking 2 hours again? And evenings? Is that the best time? Or weekend, maybe?
Either one,
Either,
for me,
Okay.
as far as I'm concerned.
okay. Is it, anybody,
I think nights on weekdays generally work better for me.
nights and weekdays you like better? Okay. Okay, let's see what we can do. I'll send out a very large doodle and give me a hint about what you'd like to do. Okay, anything else? I want a few minutes for Commissioner Communications, if there's nothing else on the agenda that people want to say. I know, Mohammed, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, our center on Plymouth Road, we're having open house. Like to invite you if you are interested in such a thing on Sunday, coming Sunday, between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock.
I missed the beginning of that. Where is it?
Open house in our Muslim Community Association on Plymouth Road.
Oh, on Plymouth Road.
Yeah,
So is that the Islamic Center?
yeah, Islamic Center.
So it's this coming Sunday?
So they're having an open house?
Yeah, the Mayor Taylor was invited and he's coming to speak little few words, you know.
That's from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock?
Yeah, 3 to 7, right.
I have been to these, they're very interesting and great food. Really good.
We'll have some Middle Eastern food.
But also very interesting.
So do people speak, or what happens for that's a long period, from 3 to 7? When would you
It's
advise?
an open
people?
house.
Well, there will be a couple of short lectures, you know, and some, you know, open question answer session.
Okay.
Nothing really formalized very well, you know.
Okay.
And of course, you know, tour for the building, you know, and
Okay.
that type of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's one incident, I don't know if you heard about it, in William Bowman, Dearborn,
Yes.
just 4 or 5 days ago.
At a hospital?
Yeah,
Yeah.
some fellow, I don't know, they said mentally not stable or whatever. He attacked a lady, you know, with hijab and this thing in the reception area, you know. From nowhere, you know, just
Yeah.
jump on
Just-
her and start beating her and this kind of thing. At that day, some group in England, they call it for Punish Muslim Day, you know, worldwide. And this fellow looks like in Dearborn, he pick up on that. You know.
That's the kind of thing community response would respond to. I mean, that's why, because I think there are more and more of those kinds of incidents against all kinds of people.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to have a way of responding.
Leslie, there, Lori Saginaw sent an email to the commission.
Yes, that's right.
And you had asked,
And I have free tickets. Do you want, unfortunately, I can't do it, but it's for 2 people, and please take them. But other people can get them too. I sent you a copy, and
I get them from the internet.
good.
Do you want to say
I
what it's
heard
for?
very good
Oh,
thing about
this is a movie called,
and
then they came
Then-
for us.
Yes, and I think it starts out with, it's about the Japanese internment.
And what are the dates? April 24th?
5th,
it's Tuesday, April 24th in Dearborn.
yeah.
From 7 to 9, and then Wednesday, April 25th at Rackham Amphitheater from 7 to 9.
Yeah. Okay. I want to say something about this great presentation that Jordan and I heard at the Dispute Resolution Center, and it sort of speaks to what the ACLU folks were talking about. Jordan, you want to say a few words about what you heard, and I'll sort of finish it out. I'm afraid you have to go up there.
Yeah, so it was absolutely fantastic to see I'm a Skyline graduate, and the program that they've started there as student or peer mediators is more recent than not, called SkyGuard. And I think perhaps the most fascinating portion of it for me was to see young students involved in reducing suspension rates, reducing expulsion rates, and being very invested in the sort of integral internal part of their peer group. What else would there to be said about it? Administration is not heavily involved in terms of these are peer mediation circles and groups, so they've really entrusted the student body to navigate this whole process, which I think is sort of unusual, right? But they seem to be very successful at it.
They have a counselor who heads it, who
Right.
was the kind of counselor who says she does things first and asks permission later. And one of the things she did was entrust a lot of the decisions, including the decision of who to select as new SkyGuard people to the student group. And it's worked fabulously, according to that. And we heard about, was it about 8 students?
Yeah, they're that day.
They were that day, and
But I
this-
think it's a much larger
Yeah.
organization and extremely diverse and multicultural, which of course is typically the focus of these kinds of things, right? You'd like to promote that, but to see it in action in such a
And
way.
what it sounds like this is a group, they've got an office where kids can go who are having trouble with their anger. Evidently, there's an awful lot of fighting in schools.
Yeah.
Evidently, this has reduced fighting a great deal. So as soon as they see something brewing, either the kids come in or the teachers come in and suggest, you take these 2 people, they're going to fight.
Yeah.
And they start a circle. And Linda, would you say a little bit about a circle, because you've been involved in them?
Well, different people do it in different ways, but generally you have 1 or 2 facilitators of the circle, and there's usually a talking stick where that gets, or something that you hold where when you have it, you're the one who speaks and no one else speaks.
Right.
And it empowers people who might not tend to speak, because when they are given this, they know that they have the floor, and they don't have to, try to jump in and interrupt other people. And it allows everybody to have a voice and usually speak respectfully if it's being facilitated well. And you begin the circle usually by talking about shared values and how you want to conduct yourselves during the circle. I don't know exactly how they do it at Skyline or how they've been taught. And again, this is the Dispute Resolution Center that we mentioned to the ACLU that went into the school to train students initially, and now I think it's taken on a life of its own.
Yeah.
But what it's doing, according to these students, is it's empowering the students. It's giving them a different way of solving problems other than fighting. It's allowing them to be heard, and their other side to be heard, and then questions asked, I assume, by the facilitators who say, where are your joint interests and where are your separate interests and how can we get, they say they've got a 97%, right? 97% solution rate, resolution rate, which is absolutely incredible. Because they're not trying, they're not trying to change the people so much as help them find ways to get around it so that they don't, so that they can still work together and be in school together without killing each other.
Exactly.
I mean, which is,
It's a way of, people have been affected by another person's actions, to explain how they've been affected, and if there are some consequences, to explain those and how other people around them have been affected, and see going forward how that can be either remedied or prevented. And you work on it together and you come up with a plan.
Yeah.
There are some interesting things happening at Skyline. I've never been in the building, but we have had time after time after time visitors from the school, and it's been a multicultural group. I don't know what's going on there, but I'm pleased.
Yeah, I wish it would, it wasn't clear that it was shared with the other schools, and I wish there were. But it's fascinating. And they're also doing things, two things I had not heard of before that made so much sense to me. They now are not that busy because kids are learning the skills. So they are doing mentoring of ninth graders as they come in, and they're doing things like class circles, where you've got a problem that's involved with a class hates the teacher. And how do we get around, so kids can talk about what they need, and the teacher can talk about what they need, and they can agree, maybe make contracts, I assume? Is that what they, and resolve it, and if it doesn't work, they can come back and do it again. They also are doing, when kids are suspended, they're supporting the kid during the suspension period, making sure that they don't fall behind, and then they are giving him a circle at the, when they come back, so that they can enter cleanly. I mean, hey.
There are so many
really
things
nuts.
that can be done. When I took over at Friends School in Detroit, I put positive energy teams in each grade, from third grade up. And I only had 3 suspensions in Detroit in 7 years. Wow. But you got to build the culture. That's what it's all about.
Right.
And it's what we're not doing in our schools.
There have been, I mean, this is a not uncommon reform in criminal justice circles too, like there are sentencing circles.
Right.
And like there have been studies about how effective they are, but only in communities that are tight-knit. They're not good for stranger crimes. They're good for like acquaintance crimes when people know each other, because there's this culture of responsibility to one another, so it makes sense that it works really well in school setting.
Right. Well, that was sort of their focus, right, is building on trust and vulnerability. And, there's various different age ranges, but mostly 16, 17-year-olds that are practicing these virtues.
Yeah, and they spoke very well about them.
Right.
I mean, they really knew what they were doing and why they were doing it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was impressed.
Really interesting to follow these people through life too, and just see how it affects,
It's got to
No
affect
doubt.
it. Yes, yes, fascinating. Anyway, there's a lot of things that we can do, and
I just want, like after this too, I wanted to say I had a communication to share myself, before we close out the meeting too.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I have a communication to share myself before we close out the meeting.
I still can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I have a communication to share before we close out the
Oh,
meeting.
yes,
too,
okay.
In case we're at that
I
point.
think we're ready.
Right. So I'm on Nextdoor, which is this
Yeah.
app for neighborhoods, and I've noticed, I live on the Old West Side. I've noticed in the past few months that 2 situations have happened. One, an abortion provider was doxxed, and there were, like at my house at least, there was information with the doctor's face, a picture of the doctor, where she lived and what she did, and it was revealed and just like put in my door, and so she was publicly revealed. And 3 guys were running around claiming that they'd been paid to do so, and someone on Twitter claimed it and then later deleted the tweet, but obviously that was really scary for a lot of people and probably very scary for the abortion provider themselves. And also recently, this past week, I didn't receive one of these myself, but apparently people in the community have said that they've received Ziploc bags in their backyards with blood and soil packets. So Nazi propaganda has been dropped in people's backyards this past week too. I haven't gotten one, but it's been a huge topic on Nextdoor.
Yeah, definitely in Water Hill neighboring. I didn't get one, but a lot of my neighbors did. It didn't appear to be targeted, though, from
Yeah, it
what
was
they
just
could tell.
random, but-
Yeah.
What do you mean targeted?
Like, I don't know, at minorities' homes, you know, to intimidate specific families. It did seem to be
Yeah, it seemed
just
more
random.
neighborhood-based, maybe. I don't
What's
know.
that?
It seemed more like geographic to some extent. Like they only had time to hit Water Hill.
Right, like, they didn't seem to be, yeah.
There is a group that has done that across the state, in different
Okay.
neighborhoods across the state. I wonder if this is similar to
Yeah,
that.
Blood and Soil, they like linked to the website too, and it's like a known Nazi website. And so, like, and I don't know that and in both situations, I think they were like anonymous senders, basically. But clearly, like the public, I mean, like this generated a lot of controversy on Nextdoor. A lot of people were talking about it, were like really disturbed by it for obvious reasons. And I don't know that they could file a complaint because we don't even know who the perpetrator was in either instance, or if they're even like native to Ann Arbor, and if they
Yeah.
just dropped it and left. But clearly, there's still stuff.
Did anybody report it to the police?
Yeah, people have,
Good.
and I think the
Yes.
police were informed about the abortion provider and where they reside, and
Okay.
have been notified to keep, a special watch on it, but it's a lot. And so I thought that was relevant information for this commission to know.
Yeah.
Also
Okay.
quickly, Travis can't make it in May, just let me know, but he's willing to meet with a smaller subset. Who wants to meet with Travis in May prior to the June meeting? This is the LGBT liaison to the mayor.
I'd be interested.
I'd like
Vivian,
to, yeah.
anyone else? Okay, cool. I'll include you guys on the email. Okay.
Great.
Jordan can hang out as well? Sounds good. All right.
Is everybody comfortable with including Jordan as a
Yes.
intern, or I don't know if we have a name for you. Do you have a name you'd like to have as
Friend.
Right.
a title?
I think intern seems appropriate,
Intern?
right?
Intern's good.
Yeah.
Whatever you
Okay.
think would look best on your resume.
Yeah. No, that's right. No, seriously. Don't worry, you'll earn it. Whatever it is.
Thank you all very much.
Should I move to adjourn?
Please.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weapon break. I got a cold. Now I